This week on the WriterCon podcast.
Read those writers you emulate, those writers that you want to grow up to be just like.
Yeah.
And don't read for plot. Study them, see how they get in and out of scenes, see how they manage in a strip of 5 linear lines of dialogue, can create distinct characters. Look at them the way a carpenter looks at a house.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Lara Bernhardt, award-winning author of the Wantland Files book series.
Hey there, writers. Hey, I'm joined today by our sound engineer, Jesse Ulrich, and my co-host and wife, Lara Bernhardt, the award-winning novelist, the host of ReaderCon, and also the managing editor for the new WriterCon magazine. Lara,
yes.
Tell us about this magazine.
This is going to be an indispensable tool for any writer at any stage in their career. We load these editions with helpful advice, tips from professionals, and honestly, just tea for the soul, something comforting, something to keep you writing, something to let you know that we have your back, we're here for you, we support you. Mm-hmm. And then to top it all off, we get fantastic interviews from authors who want to reach out to others who are coming behind them and give them a helping hand to perhaps help them further their career.
Right. Lisa Gardner in the first issue, right? And
absolutely. Fantastic
I've seen the lineup.
Interview. I was blown away. She's wonderful.
Some great people coming too. And some of those articles, Tamara Grantham has a terrific article in there.
So topical.
Yeah, AI and related stuff. Anyway, you're involved with the magazine, obviously, as an editor. And our daughter Katie has done the design, right? And
yes.
So we're pretty keen on WriterCon
All right.
magazine.
So are you saying I'm not unbiased? I'm not, but I still stand by that. I think it's an excellent piece of work. We worked very hard to make sure that it would be something helpful to anyone.
Probably not unbiased about anything we talk about on this podcast, be it books I've written or the conference we put off. Or
I am usually pretty passionate with my beliefs. That is true.
Well, that's the life to have, though, isn't it? Where you get to choose your passions and work in that world. I mean, that's as good as it gets, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say, like, if you are someone who does a thing, you are usually a harsher judge of that thing. Like, for example, as a podcast producer, I am very critical of podcasts that I like that are produced by editors better than me and judging their quality. So I would say, like, you all would probably be even harsher on a written piece of work than a non-author would be. So I'd say
if something's going to have my name attached to it, I want it to be the very best version of whatever it is. Absolutely correct, Jesse. Thank you for that.
I'm the annoying person who points out ADR things in film now because this is what I do now. So I notice these things, and everyone hates me. So
here's something
we
that
don't
I
hate
noticed.
No, thank you.
You like that segue where I used the word noticed? And
yes.
While you were deciding whether you were hated or not. Sorry. But here's what I noticed at WriterCon this year, something I don't think I knew before. There was a big reveal during karaoke night. Jesse, you're a good singer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Here's what I know. I know I can carry a tune. And that's really all you kind of need to do to sing karaoke well. And so I think I did an okay job. So
I think it's the enthusiasm.
I am enthusiastic. So the energy put forth, I think, helped too.
You had a trio. It was like
I did.
Jesse and the Supremes or something.
I met those people 15 minutes before that happened. We were just sitting in the table in the back, and we are like, we should do a song together. That's just what extroverts do. So
I was on the side.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Well, again, and I love it. We do so much fun stuff at WriterCon too.
Yeah, it's just a reminder that karaoke points out how little you know about the songs you think you know. You're like, no, there's so many more lyrics in the song than I thought there were.
I like the idea of what extroverts do, because everybody assumes that writers are going to be introverts. So did you just happen to be at the table with the only other two extroverts in the room?
Well, I came into the room. I saw some people who were like dressed in outfits, and I was like, these seem like my people. And so I sat by them, and I was right. So
now it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, our interview today is with friend of the podcast, Gary Braver, a longtime friend and a great guy, and one of the most intelligent thriller writers in the business. He's got 10 successful published novels. You may remember he was on this podcast last because he performed a duet with Tess Geritson. They co-wrote a book called Choose Me. Now he's got a solo thriller, and this may be the best book yet in his extremely distinguished career. We'll talk to Gary right after the news segment. Jesse, take us away. Well, today we're leading the newscast with a scam warning, something we unfortunately have to do from time to time. I don't know why so many people seem to target writers. What did writers ever do to you? Or books, except make the world better. But anyway, the world is what it is. So quick warning to writers and others in the publishing community regarding either a person or a group of people who appear to be impersonating BookEnds and their agents. And I'm saying BookEnds, B-O-O-K, capital E-N-D-S, which is a legit company, but people are masquerading as them to take advantage of them. If you know anything about this or you are subjected to it, the address to contact is info@bookendsliterary.com. That'll be in the show notes. But let me just say up front, no agents from BookEnds will ever ask for money or a reading fee. I don't work for BookEnds. I don't have any connection to, but I'm assured that they don't take money, just as no legit publisher will ever ask you for money to be published. So if they're asking for money or it looks like it's coming from some other URL, avoid it because you don't want to get scammed. Lara, is it just my imagination? It seems like lawyers, not lawyers, they deserve to be scammed, I'm sure. No. I can say that because I'm a lawyer. No one deserves it. But writers are particularly subjected to these scams, doesn't it seem like?
An emphatic yes from me. There are so many people out there looking to prey upon people's hopes and dreams, and it makes me sick. I actually just heard a story at a conference I was at last week. The keynote shared something that I applaud her for sharing. I'm sure it was an uncomfortable story for her, but during her address, she mentioned that many years ago, before she was successfully published and was hitting bestsellers lists, she bid for a charity event on an edit of a manuscript for herself from a well-known person. She bid a significant sum of money and she paid it, and then discovered that the entire thing was fraudulent. The charity was not involved and didn't receive her money. The well-known woman who she believed she would be working with to edit her manuscript was being impersonated and was also not involved and didn't receive any money to give to the charity. So neither entity was even involved in this, but it looked completely legitimate. It took a lot of people in. And very kindly, the woman who had been impersonated, promising to edit, actually did work with her to help her edit her manuscript because she had been coming from a place of good faith. And so I think I don't want to say it had a great ending because somebody still absconded with her money, but we can all be taken in so easily, even when our hearts are in the right places. We have to be so careful and protect ourselves.
Yeah. Jesse, you're our tech guy. What can people do to protect themselves against these online scams?
It's one of those life skills where you have to remember, like, if something looks too good to be true, it probably is. And if something is offering you the thing that you have been wanting and searching the internet for advice on how to do, you don't trust that thing. Like, good things don't come via an email from someone you've never met most of the time, 99% of the time.
And anytime people want money, or for that matter, your contact information, and you can't tell why, don't do it.
Yeah. It's always better. Like, here's the thing. If it's someone you don't know, then, like, they'll keep bothering you. If you don't answer them, just let it go. If it's something that, like, maybe it's from a company you have some sort of association with or have talked to, like, call them, right? Like, phone numbers exist. Now, you can also get scammed via phone, too. But if you're calling a real company, if you Google them, you should be able to find a real number and at least try to get a real answer.
Right. Okay, news story number 2. Of course, it's Amazon back again. As we covered last week, the FTC has filed some kind of antitrust action against Amazon. We also mentioned last time that they've limited the number of books you can upload per day to 3, apparently trying to stem the tide of AI-generated books. Well, now they've changed their whole policy. When you upload a book to KDP, you have to indicate, now pay attention to the words, you have to indicate whether it was AI-generated content, meaning text, images, or translations. You are not required to disclose AI-assisted content. And that came straight out of Amazon's content guidelines. Let me say it again. You are not required to disclose AI-assisted content. So if AI generated something, I guess all by itself, that's got to be indicated. But if you just used AI to help, that's okay. Now, how would Amazon know? Why do they care? I don't understand this
I'm
at all.
confused by the difference between those two things, but I mean, I guess you could ask. I mean, okay. I guess it's the difference between asking Amazon to write a book and you asking AI to write your book for you, and you asking AI, like, I don't know, some like pedantic question of like, how long would it take for someone to travel from blank to blank or something.
You're exactly right, Jesse. I work in an academic field outside my day job, and we are facing this right now, where we're having to keep a careful watch for AI written papers. It's one thing to use this as a resource so someone might use Grammarly to check their grammar. Well, if you could ask a tutor to assist you with something like that, they're checking the work that you did for errors. That's one thing. But unfortunately, we have had reports of a paper that was completely turned in AI generated, and it left in a big paragraph where it simply said, I am just an AI and I don't feel like I can answer this question. Like, it flipped to first person, and so it kind of gave it away that it was completely AI written.
It kind of gave it away.
Kind
of gave it away.
Listen, I love the laziness of that person to not even like search for the word bot or AI in their AI assisted essay. Like, that's the one. If you're gonna save yourself that time, the one thing you can do is like just some keyword searches, right?
Right. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm getting the impression, because Amazon certainly doesn't explain it, but I get the impression they're more concerned about AI generated images, like on the cover or the interior, than they are about words.
You know, like,
they could be more easily sued. I don't know. What do you think?
The question is, what are they going to do with that? Number one, anybody can click no. I mean, how are they going to know if you're even telling the truth?
You get sued,
but then what are they going to do with that? That's what I want to know. Why? What are they doing with it?
If Amazon was really concerned, they would limit the books you could publish to 1 a week instead of 3 a day. Because, like, who's writing 3 books a day? No human being is writing that.
Exactly.
Oh, it's conceivable that there could be like a publishing company. I doubt it, but there could conceivably be something.
Like, I mean, well, like, yeah, let's say you were an author and like all of your books had been published in print first, and you had never done an ebook. And you're like, I'm gonna do all my books on ebook and post them all on the same day. In that case, like, there could be a separate Amazon person you need to email to warn them of that. but just random people on Amazon, self-publishing, releasing 3 books a day. If you do that more than twice, like it should be suspicious.
Yeah. Well, here's the other bizarre thing that Amazon also did recently. And I probably go to Amazon every day, but I didn't even notice till somebody pointed out to me that the look inside feature is gone now. You know, it used to be next to the cover, that big arrow that said look inside, and you could look at the first 15 or 20 pages. That's gone. Now on the ebooks, they've replaced it with a little button on my computer. It's on the right that says read sample, or if you've already bought the book, it'll say read now. But that's just on the ebook buy pages. It's smaller, it's a little harder to find, but it's still there. But on the pages for paper books, gone, at least in many, if not most cases. Now, why would Amazon remove a feature that's helpful and everybody likes it and other sites are doing it? Somebody explain this to me. I don't get it.
I think it's a case of wanting to improve something, and I'm actually going to I'm going to go with the hot take here.
Ooh, hot take.
I'm going to go with the hot take. I went and looked up my books because I was concerned about this, and I actually kind of like this. Underneath the book, it says read sample. I will say it is not as obvious. I don't love that because you have to know to look for it. But once you click on it, it does automatically bring it up with the ebook, but up along the top, you can click to view the print. And I like this because people can see how beautiful the interior of Red Rain is. I went and took a look at that. It's got some beautiful artwork within the pages of it that doesn't translate well into the ebook, but is in the print book. And there's even underneath that, click here for an audio sample. So while I was at first very unhappy with this change, once I went in and started looking, I thought it could be better. Could be better presented. It could be a little more obvious, but if you know to go look for it, it does have some benefits to it. The Wantland Files series seems to be exactly the same. You can click any of those things. You can get a sample of my books anyway. If my print book wasn't there, I'd probably be less happy about it.
Yeah, are you saying there was a read sample button on the paper book page?
It doesn't. So it's just underneath the book. And it automatically brings up the ebook automatically. But up at the very top, you can select the print book. You can flip to the view for the print book. On mine. Not everybody may find that to be the case, but mine did do that. And I liked it.
That's a button you clicked on the ebook page initially, right?
Yes. So it came up on the ebook. I clicked to look, and yes, but it gives you both. You can toggle back and forth between the two. Once you click.
I didn't know that. That's
this conversation brings up the whole point, I think, of why this feature got removed anyways. Amazon's website's terrible and has always been terrible. Its UI is not useful or helpful in any way. And so it doesn't surprise me that they're probably tweaking things, not telling you about it.
And not telling anyone about it. That's the frustrating thing.
It's a very Apple way of doing it.
What happened? We used to be able to look inside and now we can't. Well, it turns out we actually can. They didn't do a good job of letting us know anything was coming.
Huh. Yeah, that's very possibly all there is to it.
So we felt like it wasn't broken and it didn't need fixing, but I guess, like Jesse said, maybe they're trying to improve some features and
or maybe they laid off the people who did the look inside feature and so had to move inside something else. Like it's a international conglomerate. Like who knows why they do anything?
Yeah, good point. All right, cue up the music, Jesse. Let's talk to Gary Braver. Gary Braver, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Bill. It's good to be back with you.
Good to see you. All right, I know I've asked you this before, but who knows? It's at least a year. You might have a different answer now. So, traditional first question. If you could offer writers one piece of advice, what would it be?
Read those writers you emulate, those writers that you want to grow up to be just like.
Yeah.
And don't read for plot. Study them. See how they get in and out of scenes. see how they manage in a strip of 5 linear lines of dialogue can create distinct characters. How there's a look at them the way a carpenter looks at a house, see the symmetry, how themes are built up. Look at the sentences, see in action scenes, there's very short, muscular sentences, and in the predicate you have all the adjectival and adverbial phrases. You don't gum things up with details.
Right.
And just read very closely. Don't speed read. Study those authors you really wish you can write like, or you emulate.
That's interesting. What I hear you saying, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's like when you said, don't worry about the plot, you're not saying plot isn't important. You're saying don't get distracted by it. Pay attention to the work.
Right. I mean, if you are a writer who wants to generate stories that are plot driven, as well as having fleshed out characters, see how other writers flesh out the characters, yet keep a narrative thrust and a plot moving quickly.
Yeah.
It's
Great
work.
advice. All right. Well, tell us about Rumor of Evil, your new novel.
It's about truth and beauty. It is the first in a series. With the success of Choose Me, I wrote with Tess Geritson, who was writing on my coattails. I decided that I wanted to do a series of my own. 2 previous books had cops in them, but they were all standalones, as all the other 9 books are standalones. And so because detectives are more important than detection, as is your guy, Kincaid is, I wanted to develop interesting characters. And what endears readers to detectives and gives them empathy is they have baggage. They have some demons that they're dealing with. I mean, every novel, and particularly in a whodunit, murder mystery, there are 2 quests. One, who left the body of Charlie Smith in the opening scene? That's the professional quest. And there's the personal quest. How do I get over my demons? And so I needed to have 2 detectives. The male detective, Kurt Lucian, is a homicide detective in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He's married to Olivia. A year or so ago, their daughter got hit by a hit and run and was killed, and they went into a deep funk. He got so dysfunctional and so grief-stricken that he could not attend his wife's own needs and her own grief and the loss. So they ended up separated. So the novel opens up, they're estranged from each other, living separately. His partner is a woman married to another woman. Her baggage is she had a terrible upbringing. Her mother was raped, and she's the product of that. The guy who did that ended up in prison. So she has all this baggage, and she also is impulsive. She's very, very smart, did very well in the academy, but she's impulsive. And so she's being mentored by Kirk to so that she won't go off the rails. So those are the 2 characters. And she's also a gay woman in an otherwise traditionally straight male profession. So she's got, there's stuff that's working against her. So I took 2 kind of people with a lot to lose and made them my detectives. And it opens up in Cambridge. The opening scene, this is not giving much away. There's a woman who is hanging by the neck in her backyard in the hottest male zone in Eastern Massachusetts, 02138, which is right out of Harvard Square. Why does this woman have everything going for her? Why is she hanging there? And both detectives felt, this has been staged. So, and it's a cover up of something that happened 20 years before, and I'll get into that later. Yeah.
So is this officially the first book in a new series?
Correct.
And so you're
the second one is that I'm in the middle of the third now.
Oh, so. Fantastic.
But I think what
I'm retired.
Yay. I think you're referencing an element in your story that involves this decades-old murder. Is that right? And it involved a 16-year-old exchange student who'd been accused of witchcraft. Where did this idea come from?
Okay. Like you do, both of you and other writers, particularly of crime fiction, I have a file which I keep some strange and fascinating crimes in real life. And one that stuck in my mind came out of 2014. You may have heard about the Slender Man case. 2 12-year-old girls from Waukesha, Wisconsin, lured a 12-year-old girlfriend into the woods and stabbed her 19 times. And she survived, and the two girls are still in psychiatric institutions.
Oh,
so I was
wow.
fascinated. It's fascinating about the motives. The motives never come through in trials or where, and people who've analyzed these kids. I did it because I wanted to appease Slender Man, who I think would have killed our families if I didn't sacrifice our girlfriend. I mean, it's silly. But I was fascinated with the mindset of adolescents who commit such brutal crimes. And I did research, and there's a real scourge of adolescents in America that threatens both the mental and physical health. It's bullying. So I looked into bullying and did research on bullying, and I learned what bullies are, the profile of a bully and a profile of the bullied. Bullies go after kids who seem weak or shy or have some unusual features. They're too big, too short, too fat, too thin. They may walk with a limp, or they have odd behavior. They speak with a lisp, or they have an accent, or they come from a different socioeconomic demographic. They might be foreigners. And so I put together a victim, a scapegoat. I had a young exchange student from pig farm in Slovakia come and live in affluent Lexington, Massachusetts for 3 months as an exchange student. And she is attractive, but she's not cool. She's got funny kind of clothes. She's got strange braids. And so the kids have fun Americanizing her and giving her a nickname, Lulu. Her name is Vadima Lupescu. Because she's of Romani extraction, she is unusual. And at a pizza party, she is reading palms, and something turns very weird. And then a few days later, dark things start happening to kids and their families. And of course, what I did was I made her the ultimate outsider, the ultimate victim. She is Romani. And isn't that like what the gypsies are? And don't they put curses on people? And don't they steal your belongings? And in the Middle Ages, didn't they start bubonic plague? And don't they drink the blood of Christian babies? And aren't they really witches in disguise? So I had all this using all these denigrating, awful myths and related it to the Salem witch trials, not too far from here in Boston. And ultimately, we're seeing that and the attitude towards immigrants. So those themes came into the book. And bullies are those kind of alpha kids who want to show their peers they're superior, they're very smart, they're very strong. And they often come from broken homes, dysfunctional homes, and they may be jealous of their victims who may be odd, but also have loving homes. And they end up scapegoating these weaker kids. And so I used those profiles in setting up the backstory. And because it takes place on Halloween, there is no Slender Man in the book, and there is nothing supernatural in the book. But I exploited those myths of gypsies and supernatural and laced that in. And so, but it's a whodunit, really. Yeah.
I can tell a lot of research went into this. That's really fascinating how you've taken all those elements and woven them together.
Yeah. But you guys do it too. I mean, it's seductive. You just got to know how much to put in and how much to leave out. Yeah.
So you got an endorsement from Lee Child and Steve Berry and William Martin.
Yeah.
That's got to feel great.
Yeah, I lucked out there. Yeah. I know them from thriller. Yeah.
It's a good book.
So it was, yeah.
Okay, I've got a question for you, Gary.
Sure.
And this goes because I remember hearing you give a talk at the Hawaii conference, which doesn't exist, at least in that state anymore. But and that was more than a decade. So if I still remember, you clearly made an impression with that talk. Anyway, what I remember you talking about is the importance of first sentences, and used the example of Fahrenheit 451, which I've read many times, but never thought about how important that first sentence was. It was a pleasure to burn, which you pointed out to me has so many different possible mentions. And then I'm starting this new book of yours, and I read this first sentence, and I thought, oh, wow, I wonder how much time he spent on that. Let me share this with everyone. The dead woman was suspended by the neck from a rope tied to a low branch of a flaming sugar maple in her backyard. I mean, one sentence and I'm in.
Good. Thank you.
So do you have a other than just enormous amounts of work, do you have a theory of the first sentence? What are you trying to achieve there?
Yeah, I mean, this does not do, this may invite you to go to the second or third sentence, but the one I use in my writing class is absolutely supreme, is the opening sentence of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. Right. And the opening sentence is, "It was a pleasure to burn." Now, what's brilliant about that is to burn is both a transitive and intransitive. It means you set on fire, and it means to be on fire. Mm-hmm. And if you, in the opening scene, you've got Montag with his, his flaming suit on. He's torching books. If you burn books, you kill yourself. I mean, it's a self-destructive act. And I don't think anything came close to that. Maybe Call Me Ishmael.
I've heard that one.
Yeah, I've heard that one too. Yeah. But I mean, if one can accomplish what Bradbury did in that book, that broadcasts the theme of the novel, mm-hmm. it's a brilliant stroke. Yeah. I haven't done that. Yeah.
You referenced the teaching, which you taught at Northeastern in Boston. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
For many years, I think.
Yeah. Too many years. Yeah. Many years. Yeah.
How did you, and that was, you were teaching writing?
Yes. I had introduced fiction writing back in the early 80s. Oh, wow. And that was because no one else was teaching it at Northeastern. Mm-hmm. And I had taught really cool courses in science fiction, horror fiction, bestsellers, and detective fiction. And people were complaining that there was no one who taught creative writing. But I had to wait until my first or second novels were published that I felt legitimate enough to do that. Mm-hmm. And it was fun. And so I started off doing short stories with kids. And Lara, what really seemed to work is they wanted to write something big. So only 14 weeks. Bill could turn out a book in 14 weeks, but these kids can't. and so I said, start a novel. I want you to get 3 slam dunk chapters. And if you can, and this is a tough part, see if you can come up with a synopsis of the story, just a kind of a story arc. And that's hard because you don't determine your story arc until you're halfway through the book. And it worked. And I had some really sharp students, and they seemed to have gotten something out of, and when they have time, they can go back to it because they got great feedback from each other.
That's a great start. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a great start for them. Yeah.
How'd you balance the 2 careers? Like once your writing started to take off, how did you keep going with both? Yeah.
A full load was 2 courses a semester. And after my 2 sons moved out and became adolescent, after adolescent age, they went off on their own, went to college and got jobs. I had more time, and I don't need a lot of sleep. I think 5 hours would probably do it. So I would on the days off, I engineered.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. It happens when you get older, I guess. On my days off, I would devote those to writing, unless I had any kind of papers to work on, grade and all that. Mm-hmm. And so I was just able to do that. And on weekends, if I had time, when Kathy and I aren't doing anything or socializing, I'd grab it when I can. But I'm sure you guys probably feel the same way. You need a large chunk of time to rev up, then denouement off, But I can't do it in an hour and do things in between. I have to,
Right. I could maybe revise, but not generate a first draft like that.
Exactly.
Now, I remember you telling me once a story about, and this has been years ago too, but having David Benioff, I may be mispronouncing that, the author of City of Thieves. At that time, that's not right. He was the author of City of Thieves, and you had him come in and talk to you and class. And of course, since he's been on Game of Thrones and now he's doing movies, right?
Yeah. The thing is, he never did come to class. I had Dennis Lehane and Stephen King and a lot of other people, but it got close. He got so involved with the Game of Thrones that he could not take time off to come from New York or wherever he was, Iceland, and come to Boston. But that would have been a coup. But I did have, Tess Geritson, and that one real coup was having the students read Mystic River, see the movie, and Venice Came In the next week, which was really kind of nice. Yeah, wow. Of course he's from Boston, so that was easy. But yeah, that was nice. I would love to have Benny off though, but he was remarkable. Yeah,
lucky students probably didn't appreciate how lucky they are.
Yeah, that was kind of fun for them. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, here's another one I'm going to pluck out of my clearly increasingly shouldn't be dependent upon memory. But you won the Massachusetts Book Award for your book Flashback, right?
Yeah.
Which was a terrific book.
Thank you.
And having been there, I'm of the opinion that anything people are calling a genre novel probably has to be roughly 16 times as good to justify itself to an awards committee. Or is that just how I feel about it?
What's the question, Bill? I'm sorry.
So the question is, when your book was the first thriller ever to win the Massachusetts Book Award, how did that feel?
Oh, it felt great. I mean, I just didn't. It came in a letter to me, and I said, I cannot believe this. I called Kathy. This really addressed to me, and yeah. I mean, it's and because they never considered anything other than literary books that are read by 7 people in the universe. So this was a real honor, and I think it's in part that. I worked on fleshing out the characters. Mm-hmm. In part, it was also based on experience. My aunt, who would fill a room with her presence, she's a very smart and very successful business person, began bumping down the staircase toward nothingness. And having spent time with her while she was fading with Alzheimer's, that gave me the idea of what if they could cure the disease. And while I was sitting with her, she's deep into the disease, and she's just something attached to tubes in a bed. I had a very freaky experience. And I was with my cousin, her daughter, who could speak Armenian. I don't speak Armenian. And all of a sudden, my aunt Nancy, who was in bed and just babbling, suddenly lapsed into Armenian, articulate Armenian, in a thin little girl voice, and she was having a full conversation with her mother, who had died 80 years before. And this just sent a goose rash up my back. And so that became, that got me to do research on it, and spending time with a pharmacologist who would go from Alzheimer's wards to Alzheimer's wards in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and I'd follow them around. So I became so imbued in these poor people that just blanking out, that I saw their characters, and I drew from what I experienced with those characters, and so I think that had something to do with it. And the book really does, it's so empathetic toward these victims, so they're not even part of it.
It's a great book for many reasons. Okay, Gary, if I knew this, I've forgotten, but I plucked this out of your bio this morning. You have a degree in physics?
Yeah.
Seriously? How did that? So you're a smart person.
Not a good physicist, though.
How did this happen?
Well, I had 2 uncles who were scientists. One was a metallurgist, and the other one was a chemist. And I was a poor kid, so we got a scholarship to Worcester Tech, which is only 175 miles from Hartford, Connecticut, where I was born. And I did a lot of writing in high school, but it was the age of, going into space and nuclear physics and all that, and I thought I wanted to be one. By the sophomore year, I realized I was much more interested in words. I can deal with words. I couldn't deal with atoms. And I was editor of all these school stuff, newspaper and this and that. And so I ended up having to take courses at Harvard and at Clark and Worcester and other schools to build up enough credit so I can just go right into graduate school in English, because I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to write. And this sounds bizarre. I learned how to write when I became a college professor. I learned how to read when I became a college professor. If you want to know how Bill Bernhardt writes, teach one of his books in class. You do plumb the depths. You do studies. I study how the book is put together. So that got me to understand how books were written, and I had a great job at Northeastern. I taught anything I wanted to teach, and so that is how I did. I have never regretted the background in science, because in the 70s I started a course in science fiction, which was not done anywhere else. And to the chagrin of my colleagues, I considered science fiction kiddie litter. And so it was, and I was up with the challenge of having to take respectable titles from Frankenstein on. But so I did not regret that, because I learned the science of science fiction. That helped me understand that stuff. Yeah. But
very cool.
Yeah, it was wild.
So many of our listeners are writers, and they're always interested in learning more about process. So one of our traditional questions is, are you a pantser or a planner or an outliner?
When I first started, I was an outliner, and I remember having 90 single-spaced pages and outlining one of my early novels. And I said, "Come on,
a 90-page outline?
Yeah, it was nuts. It was crazy."
Whoa!
And I said, 3 of those, I got a book. So, and then halfway, and you're halfway through, I'm veering in different directions. So I never really followed the outline. And so I just jump in now. It's a dark and stormy night, and see where it takes me. Yeah. But I do make plot points. I do say this is the, kind of define an arc to get a spine or something. So I kind of know where I'm going to go, hoping that when I get to a certain point, I'll figure out what the next step is. But at least I have something of a trace line to follow. Yeah.
So a loose outline. I think this is what we recommend, at least a loose outline. So you've got the idea, but absolutely give yourself the freedom to let it adapt. And my stories always transition as I'm writing them. I mean, the final iteration does not look like the first iteration. So, and then when I go back to my original ideas, it never quite matches. I kind of laugh. I think, oh yeah, I was going to do that. That was terrible. That's not a good idea.
But recycle them for maybe possible other books too.
Smart. Yes. Yeah. So what does a typical writing day look like for you?
I get up around 4:30 or 5, jack myself up with a good cup and a French roast, and then just read the news and get depressed, and then plug right in.
And you're ready to write.
Right.
How many hours can you spend? Like, let's say that you're in your first draft stage. How many hours can you spend creating? This is interesting to me, because I feel like a finite point of hours that I can truly create before I'm exhausted. Right. What about you?
Right. Well, so like I said earlier, I need large blocks of time. So I'd probably start writing from about 6 o'clock to noon, and then I'd either go to the gym or take a bike ride, or maybe take a nap in the afternoon after that, and then write to 5 o'clock when I flatline. And after that, I read if I can, absorb anything, or watch a movie or something. But it's usually about 8 hours a day. I put in 7 or 8 hours a day, and you know what it's like. Once you're in that zone, you almost forget what the time is, and if it's going well, it feels great. And you look and say, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it's 7 hours have passed." But and now being because I'm retired, I have more blocks like that of time to work. And then I leave a scene kind of open, not even finished in a theoretical way. I remember way back, I read that William Faulkner would leave in a mid-sentence. But what you didn't know is he just drank a bottle of bourbon and fell off his chair.
Just couldn't come up with the word.
So, and then I polish the next day. But I often do. I don't do a draft. I go back and polish until I know that's humming okay. And if it needs more changes, I'll do that later on, and then try to move ahead. And this kind of dances back and forth. What about your own style? I mean, Bill, Lara, you work.
I was amazed listening to you at how much that sounds like me, because I get up early, and I like when the You know, the house is quiet and it's dark,
Yes.
and
Sure.
the cat bothers me, but really it's quiet beyond that, and I can get a lot done. And then, like you, I'll usually take a midday break, although often that means I come back and work on publishing or WriterCon or this podcast or whatever.
Yeah, lots of irons in the fire, Bill. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Hey, one last question, which you may have already answered, Gary, but what are you working on next?
The second book, it's called Heat at the Moment. It takes place in an English department at a fictitious Boston University.
This doesn't sound very fictitious. What?
Getting back at my colleagues. And I have a very right-wing professor who is murdered in the opening scene, and he's got a Fijian war club stuck in his face. And no one has a clue where this Fijian war club came from or why he's dead, but he's in this liberal institution. And so there's five suspects. And as we go through the book, they each have legitimate reasons for killing this guy. Some are political, some are personal, some are, he violated some people in the past and did not get their degrees. So that's what that is. It's called The Heat of the Moment. And the detectives try to figure out who was driven in the heat of the moment to leave this guy with a smashed up head, and where the Fijian war club come from.
And where?
Yeah. And we can expect that next year?
Hopefully, yes. Yeah.
Fantastic. You need to come back on the podcast when
I
that
would
comes
love to.
out.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Gary. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Bill. Nice meeting you, Lara.
Nice to meet you.
You too. Bye-bye. Thanks, Bill.
Well, you already guessed what the parting words will be, since Lara and I both have books to talk about. And I already mentioned, I think, my new book, just out, Partners in Crime, on sale everywhere in paper and ebook. Quick explanation for this novel. In 1991, Ben Kincaid hit the literary scene in my first published book, Primary Justice, which sold around 500,000 copies and led to a series of 19 novels. In 2018, Daniel Pike hit the scene in The Last Chance Lawyer, which became a #1 bestseller before the book was released and led to 6 novels. And people really have been asking me to team up these 2 guy lawyer characters, and now it's actually happening. And that's why it's Partners in Crime, my 2 best lawyer characters teamed up, and it's a lot of fun. That's Partners in Crime. Now, Lara, this being October, I think we need to talk about the Wantland Files series.
Yes, everyone else is excited about pumpkin spice lattes, but I'm excited because it's time for ghost stories and supernatural suspense, and I love it. My Wantland Files series is just what you need. The X-Files meets Ghost Hunters. A little bit of creepy, a little bit of mystery, and a lot of fun.
Great books. How many of them now, Lara?
5.
5. And another one.
Working on the 6th. Working on the 6th. It's coming.
And that can be you, writers. When was your first book published, Lara?
2016, late in the year.
2016. Now she's got 7. That could be you, my friends. So until next time, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. See you next time.